By looking at the objectives of the next hour or so, we would be able to determine the scope and limitations of my session with you. Because much as we want to know about so many things, we only have approximately an hour left. Because I was told it's 8 to 9:30. So if I'm to finish at 9:30, I might have to sacrifice some of the interaction. But anyway, for a start, I hope that by the end of this session, you would be able to define evidence-based teaching, explain its importance, describe two concepts there, classroom-based assessment and diagnostic teaching. And finally, that you'd be able to discuss the connection of classroom-based assessment and diagnostic teaching to evidence-based teaching. Because this session is on evidence-based teaching. Now, what on earth do these things called classroom-based assessment and diagnostic teaching got to do with evidence-based teaching? And for an outline, I have actually divided it into the three major terms, first of which is evidence-based teaching. Then we have classroom-based assessment, under which is a very quick review on what we mean for our purposes, what we mean about assessment, what meaningful assessment is, what is our role as teachers in assessment, and now we have the principles of classroom-based assessment. And the last aspect of the content would be on diagnostic teaching. Any questions at this point? Are our topics vis-a-vis the objectives actually learnable and doable? Practical, okay? We have to be, right? Because we have limitations. And now, I will be sharing with you what I believe to be the most important things that we need to remember about these three concepts, starting with evidence-based teaching. So that's a very brief definition of evidence-based teaching. And it does recognize what some of you said earlier about the role that research plays, and also about the role that classroom experiences play, particularly in terms of what the students or the pupils are able to achieve and what they are not able to achieve. And we continuously try to find evidence for what works because, if I may borrow what Sir said earlier, we want the best. Which teacher would not want the students to succeed anyway? It is inherent in a teacher's desire to have the objectives met and to have the skills, competencies, even knowledge and values learned and acquired by the students. And so this is an ongoing process. As you know, what might work with one class might not work for another class. And you have this mission to continuously try to see what works better, what works best under circumstances and concerning different students. So to put it graphically, it is that, simply. We gather evidence. We gather proof. Not just from the classroom, particularly how our students respond to lessons and how they achieve vis-a-vis lessons, but also what literature. By literature here, I am referring to research, theory, studies, what they say. Because so many people have come before us, and they've come and gone actually. And they have tried out so many things, and they have written about these things. In fact, we ask our teachers now to do action research, precisely for them to get into the habit of continuous search, of the continuous search for what works or what might work better. And all for the desire of maximizing learning of students. So it is simply that. Forget anything and everything else about evidence-based teaching, but do not forget that. It's so easy to remember. I repeat, by literature there, we're talking about theory on pedagogy, theory on learning, on teaching, research on teaching, learning, among other things. Because this afternoon, you will see me again, and literature will mean something else this afternoon. But for today, the evidence that we're talking about in the literature is that in terms of theory and studies or research, empirical literature and theoretical literature. Okay. Any questions at this point? Are we okay? Are we okay at the back? I don't hear our colleagues at the back. Okay, then I will move on to this question. If evidence-based teaching is this, why then do you think it's important? Why? Why should we even bother? Why does this session even exist in your 11-day long training? Why bother with evidence-based teaching? Bakit? Pwede namang maglagay ng ibang topics, pero nilagay yan. Bakit po? Ano bang halaga niyan?
Practically, we could not just design our for a certain teaching if we don't know what is existing or what is the need or what is to be given to our students. It's a matter of teaching, matching teaching, and learning needs of our students.
So again, it's about the learning. We're talking about teaching, but since the very first one who spoke, it's about evidence-based teaching, but it's always learning and the learners that come out in most of the answers. Anyone else? Bakit po? Sige ma'am.
Well, for me, evidence-based teaching is very important so that we would be fair and just in giving ratings to our children. And of course, for you also as a teacher, you should know where to start based on the performance of every learner you have inside your classroom.
Which brings us to the next concept, and that has something to do with assessment. Ma'am mentioned the importance of fairness, especially in the assessment of performance. And when we talk about performance, as teachers, we're talking about performance in class. And we are able to make sense of that through the assessment process. That clearly is more than simply a number. It's more than a grade. It's more than a score. Because again, we recall what we were told by our teachers before us, that assessment is that. It's not a product. It's a process of gathering information about what a student knows, is able to do, and is learning to do. It is so positively stated. Sometimes we think that when we assess, we're just out to find out what's wrong and what's not working. A more positive way of looking at it is simply to say that we are gathering information about what our students are learning, what they have learned, and what they are just in the process of learning. Almost there, but not quite. Still far from the finish line, but somehow one baby step at a time. Sometimes one step forward, two steps backward. But it's all part of the process. Ganun naman po ang buhay, di ba? Minsan po, i-announce, meron tayong dagdag sa sweldo, tayong mga empleyado ng gobyerno. Pero pagkatapos pong tanggalin ang mga buwis, parang mas maliit pa ang take-home natin. Parang minsan po ganyan sa ating mga bata. Kala mo nakaandar na, tapos pagdating ng assessment ulit, summative, halimbawa, ay, kala ko alam na nila, bakit biglang ngayon pangit na naman yung resulta. Kaya po, proseso siya. Just when we thought it has been learned, then we later discover that the kids are still just in the process of still learning it. And we know that learning is a lifelong process. That's why we are all here. Otherwise, our friends in DepEd would not have asked us to come over. And we do know this, that it is integral to instruction because it enhances, empowers, and finally, I like this one, celebrate. It's the first time that I encountered the word celebration in connection to assessment. That's why I chose it. I chose to share it with you. Because more often than not, we think of assessment, we think of negative things. We think of negative things. So I repeat, in the same manner that our working definition of assessment is positively stated, that is another positive concept, the celebration of student learning. And we can only do that if we make assessment integral to instruction. Bakit nga naman tayo nag-a-assess? Kasi gusto nating malaman kung paano pa natin mas maaayos ang ating pagtuturo. Kahit po ang mga UP Diliman faculty, pinapa-attend po ng mga training. Lalo na po yung mga bago, kahit summa cum laude ang mga yan, kahit PhD na. Basta pagbago pa lang po sa pagtuturo, kailangan 1 linggo mag-attend ng sessions on teaching effectiveness. Kahit ang PhD mo pa sa ibang bansa, hindi. Kailangan alam mo kung ano ang pagtuturo, kung paano matuto ang mga estudyante, kung bakit ka nag-a-assess. Hindi para ipakita na ang galing mo. Tapos yung estudyante, dyan lang, yan pa lang ang kaya. Hindi ka nag-a-assess para takutin ang mga bata. Hindi ka nag-a-assess kasi hindi ka ready magturo. So, quiz ka na lang bigla or seat work na lang bigla. Hindi ka nagbibigay ng assessment kasi galit ka or bad mood ka. Okay? So, pati po yan, no? Pati yan. Ganun po kahalaga ang pagkatuto. Kung kaya, saan mang eskwelahan at man yung konteksto, ngayon kaharap ko kayo, mga kasamahan sa basic education system. Every semester naman po, siguro 7 magkakasunod na semestre na, kaharap ko naman po mga faculty ng UP Diliman para sa mga ganito ring mga pagtitipon. Nang sa ganon, mas matutupan ng mas maayos ang mga mag-aaral. Ganyan naman daw po ang guro, di ba? Saan ka man nagtuturo, kung guro ka sa isip at puso mo, hindi pwedeng hindi mo isipin kung paano mas matututo ang mga bata. O ang mga estudyante o ang mga matanda. Kasi hindi kasi po masters na or PhD minsan yung mga estudyante namin. Ganun po. So let's celebrate that because that's something that is good to know. And if we want assessment to be meaningful, it would have to be in authentic contexts that allow students to demonstrate learning by performing meaningful tasks. And this is where I would like to pick up what was said earlier. It has something to do with performance. Okay. In the past, all we had to do was to answer pen and paper tasks. But that was in the past. And now we would like to involve the students more instead of writing things on paper. We would like them to be more demonstrative. If you must, what is the term? Showy. Diba? Ang showy mo naman. Diba? Or ang PDA mo naman, public display of achievement. Okay? Baguhin po natin yon. Public display of achievement. And the first public of our students is the class they belong to. And you belong to that class as the teacher. Pauso po natin, sana mag-trend, no? Public display of achievement. And the public of the students is the class they belong to. And the teacher belongs to that class. Di ba pag ganun po, mas madaling tandaan ang performance? Diba? Kasi kailangan mong i-display, kailangan mong ipakita. Kasi po, ganito daw po yan. Ang learning, parang love, action word. Kailangan pinapakita. Wow, di ba? Dagdag po natin sa trending. Ayun, parang ang mga sinusulat yung notes, yung mga yung mga yung mga pick-up lines, ha. Baka po hindi na ako baka po pauwiin na ako ulit pabalikin ako sa UP ng mas maaga, ha? Kung ano-ano yung mga sinasabi ko sa inyo. Naka-record pa po naman. Pwede naman po yung i-edit out. Eh. And because of that, we say that meaningful assessment achieves a purpose and provides clear and useful information, which becomes part of the evidence that you will use to do good, if not better, instruction. In fact, it may also identify misunderstandings in students' learning, but because of that, meaningful assessment would be able to give or provide corrective feedback and direction. And I think it is because of that aspect of providing corrective feedback that we will later look at diagnostic teaching. And you will see how all these things connect to each other when you have a session later on with Dr. Pado and the Phil Iri. And because we're talking of the classroom, whether we like it or not, we teachers are the primary assessors of students. But more and more, we have been trying to involve students in the assessment process, self-assessment, and even peer assessment. And you have there a long sentence because it summarizes the two broad purposes why teachers design assessment tools. And primarily, to inform instruction would be one, and the second is to monitor students' progress towards achieving learning outcomes and standards of student performance. The second one somehow makes us recall the curriculum guide, the K-12 curriculum, the standards, competencies, and learning outcomes. And you had a walkthrough of those things yesterday. And it is also in connection to that why later on there will be high-stakes national assessment measures in the form of achievement tests. But for our purposes in the classroom, we need to collect such information to find out if our instruction is working or not working. If you could say it in one sentence, how would you define or describe classroom-based assessment? We pause a bit. In one sentence, in your own words, for example, what have you picked up about classroom-based assessment so far?
Classroom-based assessment, it is the specific information I obtained from the knowledge and skills that the pupils learned in the classroom.
Okay. So learning achieved by students can be verified through classroom-based assessment. What else po? Ma'am?
Celebration of students' learning.
Mom was actually listening to me. Thank you, Mom. I did not travel. I did not leave the house at 4:30 this morning in vain, because at least there is one participant who picked that up about assessment as a venue to celebrate students' learning. Meron pa po? Gustong magdagdag? Ay, hindi na pick up yung PDA. Yes, sir.
Classroom-based assessment is actually tracing the performance of the students. It's not just only for paper and pencil test, but also performance in terms of role play and any other activities in order that the students can really perform well, and they will be assessed based on the rubrics.
So, sir, even mentioned specific activities that will serve as venues for students to demonstrate or perform as a way to provide you as teachers evidence of what they have learned or what they are learning. And that particular assessment tool called rubrics was even mentioned. Any questions at this point? Yes, sir.
This is not a question. This is an insight on my own interpretation on the classroom-based assessment. It is an in-depth relationship among teacher and students. Not to give fear to the students, but a celebration. Yes. Sir.
And imagine if we teach very well most of the time, that's a lot of celebration. Imagine what the look on teachers' faces would be. Come Friday, yes, thank God it's Friday. It's showtime for my students. It's assessment time, and I look forward to celebrating with them what they have learned. Hindi yung, naku, Friday na naman, eto na naman po. Okay. Yes, ma'am?
Classroom-based assessment could also be getting or knowing what is happening in the class and processing them so that we can give meaning.
What's going on? What's happening? Let's process so that things will make sense. Okay. And that has to be done continuously. Continuously. Otherwise, we remain spectators to what is happening instead of active participants and agents of change, so to speak. And sir mentioned earlier about a personal relationship, no? A deep personal relationship. And that is another positive way of looking at it, that as you spend more time with students, as you gather more information about them, you feel that you get to know them more and you become more involved. Yes, it is a relationship. It is a relationship. But not the romantic kind, okay? Especially if you're working, we're not talking pedophilia or something, no? Because it's K to 3. No, not the romantic kind. Okay? And now, yeah, mabantay bata daw tayo. And now we have the longest portion of your handout. And this is the portion on the principles of assessment that assist learning and inform instruction. So it is at this point where I would like you to spend a longer length of time trying to read and think about those 9 boxes, because I will be asking you to try to answer these questions. Which principle of classroom-based assessment is most applied, and which is least applied, and why do you think so? So I will 15 minutes to discuss it in your respective groups be enough? We hope there's some kind of consensus. But if there's no consensus, because your experiences are different, then that's okay. There are 9 principles of classroom-based assessment. They assist learning and inform instruction. Will 15 minutes be enough po for you to discuss in your group the answers to the questions? Okay, let's look at 15 minutes. Okay. And then kindly choose somebody to share with the bigger group, no? With the plenary, with the rest of the participants, what you think is the most applied and the least applied and why so, based on your own experiences.